get the ball rolling for this work of the Nepal Risk Reduction Consortium, we started with a relatively small group of international organisations and the Red Cross movement. So we had the Government of Nepal, the Home Ministry specifically, alongside the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the UN Development Programme, the Red Cross movement, and the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, or OCHA, which is the emergency part of the UN family. Relatively small group, and we sat down together for a few days and we mapped out initially what needs to be done, who could lead on what. We broke the task up into 5 discrete areas of work. The first area, what we call Flagship 1, is about making schools and hospitals safer. The Asian Development Bank, the World Health Organization teamed up with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education to lead on that work of safety of schools and safety of hospitals. Flagship 2, the second area of work of the consortium, is led jointly by the Home Ministry of the government and UN OCHA, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, which is part of the UN. Flagship 2 is about emergency preparedness. It's the stuff most people think of when they think of disaster preparedness. Flagship 3 is about flood mitigation. It's looking at the hazard of water-induced disasters. The World Bank is leading that work in flood mitigation, along with the Department of Irrigation in the government system. The fourth area of work, Flagship 4, is the area of community preparedness. It's co-led by the International Red Cross movement, the Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and the Ministry of Local Development in this country. The fifth and the final flagship area is the policy and institutional work that needs to be done to make this country deal with risk better. Most concretely, it's about getting the building code implemented. It's there, it's on paper though, and it's not implemented, and the biggest killers in the next earthquake in this country, without question, are going to be buildings, not the earthquake itself. But also building up the institutional capacity in government to manage risk, whether it is at the municipal level, looking at land use planning and so forth, or whether it is a new National Disaster Management Authority, which is a big missing piece of Nepal's institutional setup for dealing with risk. This one, I should mention, is led by the Home Ministry, but this time jointly with the UN Development Programme, with UNDP. Very quickly, we started to expand the consortium, and we were very fortunate. A number of governments and regional organisations started to join. So we had the European Commission coming in, the US government, the British government, the Australian government, the Japanese government, and most recently the Indian government has been now very active and about to formally join. But these governments all then came into this consortium at the core of the work, if you will. They brought with them financial strength, they brought technical skills, they brought a lot of political influence, and this is really part of the recipe of what is making the consortium work, is that we've brought these different constituencies, everyone's bringing something to bear to the task. We hope indeed that the consortium will keep growing. If you look at the consortium and its current membership, you see that we've broken down basically an institutional silo that is, perennially holding back these types of risk reduction efforts. We've really merged the work of long-term development actors with the work of, if you will, short-term humanitarian emergency actors. I think the story of the Nepal Risk Reduction Consortium is really about breaking down that silo and having both of those, if you will, those sort of subcultures in one room, in one team, reading one work plan. And I think that's the huge kind of breakthrough. And it's a big shift in mindset. It's a shift in mindset that the Government of Nepal is also making gradually as well. The other aspect of this consortium is you've got government and non-government actors in the room. And of course, above all, we've got this international and the local team coming together. So we've got the many Nepali actors in this consortium alongside this very, very strong international commitment and support. We're all bringing different skills. We're sustaining this effort when some are losing the energy or are having a pretty hard year financially, someone else is stepping up to the plate. And so as a large team like this, you really do sustain the effort over a much longer period of time, I think. Really the biggest challenge is to keep everyone very focused, to resist the temptation of spreading yourself even more thinly. Recognizing that every new idea that comes is a good idea, and these are things that are worth doing, but they do come with an opportunity cost. There's a huge temptation all the time to add more work plans to our ambition. Lots of ideas about new flagship, potential flagship candidates on climate change, on food security, on education and awareness, lots of very worthwhile ideas. The problem for me is if we lose our focus, we're going to start really losing the impact that we're achieving so far. And we're by no means at a point where we can start sort of celebrating that we've broken through, we've broken the back of this risk problem. It's still an enormous issue. I think it could work elsewhere. It would need to be adapted to the local environment. Here, it's worked very well. For example, I used this link I have with the UN ISDR, with the International Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction. This is a UN initiative that brings together globally a lot of organizations, multilateral and bilateral, the Red Cross. So this for me was a platform that I could bring to the national level and play that card in terms of helping to convene and bring people forward. In other countries, it may be a World Bank person that steps forward to try and get the ball rolling. It could be a Red Cross person. I don't think we have to sort of lock into this model, but the idea is a pretty generic one, which is when you're faced with as big a task as this, and you've got a pretty good level of awareness and you've got a pretty good level of anxiety, so there's a kind of a political will to do something different and to get started on something ambitious. At the end of the day, this risk reduction issue, for reasons I don't fully understand, can get lost a little bit in the stratosphere of abstraction, of hazards, the jargon of risks and hazards and mainstreaming and all this. But at the end of the day, it really does come down to saving lives. That this is work that is not just done by emergency workers that drive ambulances and fire engines and helicopters, but this can be done by people that work on building codes, that people that can work even in agriculture in the area of improving seed varieties so that you get a more reliable crop, let's say, even when weather patterns are changing. We can all be kind of lifesavers, whether we're development workers or emergency workers. So I think this sense of real mission is the glue that holds together this consortium. I think a real sense of relief too, in a way, that we found a formula that allows us to start making a difference. This consortium is ambitious in its breadth and in its vision, but it's already proving to be not overly ambitious, but doable.